Welcome to Stage Explorations, where we interview the theater creatives and artists from the theater world, those who perform on stage that the audience sees, and those behind the theater stage that the audience almost never sees. I am a journalist and theater fan, Buell Brown, and today's guest is...
Hi, everybody. My name is Sharon Yablon. I'm the playwright director who created A Garden of Terrible Blooms podcast of radio theater, short plays of the weird and surreal set in different parts of Los Angeles. If you want to learn more about us, please tune into this conversation of Stage Explorations, where I had some wonderful questions. I got to talk about my inspiration and how I create the plays and how I found the people I've worked with. And you can also find us, you can download the podcast from podcast forums or listen to the plays directly on our website at www.terribleblooms.net. But the interview I did with Stage Explorations is really a great way to kind of see what I'm all about and how I approach writing and why I'm doing this. So thank you.
The first question is, Sure. When did you fall in love with theater and why did you have to be part of the theater world?
I think I first fell in love with theater in college. I just took one playwriting class and I had an internship where we assisted the writer-director and then we had a chance to write our own scenes and direct them. And that was just kind of amazing for me. So that was the first time. And then there was a long gap, very long gap before I did it again. And so I re-fell in love with it later when I turned 30 after college. Well, I think it's just kind of perfect for me because it's a way for me to create these worlds that I'm kind of in control of. With life, there's so little that we can control. And I create these characters in these worlds and I'm sort of the master. That's one thing. And I think another thing is that, I write these characters that are, kind of uncomfortable or they express their feelings. They don't have boundaries. And I think I feel awkward sometimes in the world and it makes me, it just sort of makes me feel more comfortable to create these characters that don't have to censor themselves. And I just kind of feel safe channeling things through them. And it's so in that way, it's kind of perfect for my, various traumas and personality.
When did you fall in love with writing and when did it go from an interest to an obsession?
Let's see. I dabbled in writing. I first fell in love with writing probably, I guess in college. I was always a reader and I always kind of thought about writing, but I didn't really do it until I took a creative writing class. And then I took a few more classes in my 20s, and that's when it just became obvious that this is what I have to do. It was just a passion, and I just had to follow it. And of course, I feel so lucky that I have a passion. And after all these years doing it, it hasn't faded, like passions often do. So, yeah, I guess, in college was when I first fell in love with it. But curiously, I was not a creative writing major. I was an English major. So again, I just sort of dabbled a little, but it was always kind of in the back of my mind.
Theater experience, why is it so unique both for the audience and the actors during the production?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's nothing like it. I mean, there's nothing like any art form, but this one is live in person and you have the audience and there's so many different stages to it. There's the thinking of the play and the writing of the play, and then, taking it to the next level with the actors. And it's still not a play until you have the audience. You need that other element that's quietly observing or, sometimes heckling, but quietly observing and adding that other element. It's like a mysterious thing of physics, and the actors need to be watched and heard to make theater. And that's kind of the magic of it, and that said, each night, if you have a run of a show, each night is different, slightly different, even though it's rehearsed and they're doing the same thing, it's different because the audience is different, or an actor can be off, or an actor can discover something new about their character. And that's also the wonder of it, that it's just never quite exactly the same as it was. And then, of course, it's this ephemeral art form that is there, in all its vivid glory. And then it's gone. And, it's kind of like us, we're here and then, we die and we're gone. And it's hard to wrap your head around. But theater, that's what theater is too. It's just ephemeral. And I love that, as much as it's difficult, because it reminds you of loss. I think I'm attracted to the beauty of the transience of presence in that.
What is your process when you get the idea to writing it to get it staged? What's your process?
Well, writing wise, I never start with an idea. I wish I could be one of those writers that sat down and had the idea and the outline, and that's just not me. So I will maybe start with a song or a piece of art that I saw, a painting or photograph, or a place that I visited, and it just sort of haunts me. And I start to feel the characters that are there. And that's just kind of how I start. And as I'm writing, I'm, because I'm always writing for the stage. So I'm imagining, how is it going to be seen? Where are the actors going to be? So the words are coming, but I'm also, seeing them on stage. And that's also kind of mixed in with the writing process. And then, I'm in a writer's group, so I'll bring pieces of new work to the group and actors will read it. Or if that's not available, I'll just, have actors come read it. And then we, if there's a way to do it, we get cooking and start talking and rehearsal and take it from there.
Why is music and art so integral to your plays?
Oh gosh, it just is. I get so much inspiration. My favorite artists and photographers, Diane Arbus, Nan Golden, Jeff Wall, Gregory Crutzen. You look at any of these photographs and you could just project things onto it. They just sort of, the faces that Diane Arbus captures really speak to me, and I'm just able to sort of jump off that. Music has always been a big part of my life. An early photograph of me as a baby is me sitting, going through my parents' records and just holding them. And I feel like I'm not a musician myself, but it's a huge part of my life. I'm always playing records and listening to music. And so when I'm writing and doing the transitions between scenes and even beyond that, the storytelling, the music is kind of a part of it. And I'll just be writing and something will come into my head and I'll just know that that's the right type of music to be in the play. And that's just how I've always worked.
Where did the idea come from for A Garden in Terrible Blooms short plays podcast? And why did you need to write them?
Well, many years ago, so I started doing theater when I moved back to LA from San Francisco when I turned 30. And so a few years after that, I did one radio play and I just really loved it. I loved the whittled down thing of just hearing the actors, the voices in your ear and having that be so transporting. And I was always thinking, well, I'd like to do more of these, but I just got busy with actually staging the work. But I always wanted to do more. And my neighbor and I have worked together on plays before. So he's a wonderful sound designer and musician. And his name's Thomas Chan. And he's done live music for a lot of my shows. And so I talked to him about radio plays, would you want to do this? And he said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And so we did one. And then that went really well. And then the pandemic hit. And I just, wanted to do more. And then I had this idea, which I think was always there, to have an audio tour of Los Angeles. I love tours. Whenever I visit a place, I always want to do a tour, but not a big mainstream one, a weird person I might meet in a dive bar that says, hey, I'll show you, the ghost tour. And so I like these sort of off-kilter tours. And so I started to imagine these pieces as my own tour or, an alternate tour of LA. Here's an alley and here's where murder took place, and here's a part of suburbia that, sort of nondescript. And that just was really exciting to me. And, aside from that, my plays have always taken place in LA. So I already kind of had that format. And then the other thing was, this gave me the chance to really work with musicians, because music is so much a part of these plays. It's not just opening and closing the play. So I was really excited to have music be even more of a storytelling facet of my plays. When I do plays live, there's always long music interludes and stuff, but this, I could really go to town. And there's a couple plays where there's a soundscape throughout, and so it was fun to kind of explore that. And I just got really excited by the idea of that. As much as I do miss seeing live theater, just hearing it, hearing the spoken word and music was something I was really excited about.
And did you have any influences before you start creating the podcast, like other authors or radio plays that you not mimic, but that inspired you to do like these podcasts?
I actually didn't. So I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. I think my plays are probably more music heavy and maybe more stream of consciousness than others. But no, I wasn't really influenced by radio plays. I was influenced by maybe prog rock, music, like a concept album that tells a story, and maybe in a weird way, all these plays put together can, you can shuffle them around, but they can tell sort of a weird story of LA. And it was that. And of course, my favorite authors and filmmakers. I always go back to The Twilight Zone and Rod Serling, and being exposed to that at a really young age, and reading Ray Bradbury and George Louis Borges and David Lynch, and these writers that take you into the dream world. And it just seemed like with radio plays, if we're getting rid of senses, the sense of seeing, then the dream world there's a new portal into it, and it sort of opens up. And I love the dream world. So that, all those things were my influences.
Is there a theme that goes throughout all the podcasts?
Probably, the themes that have attracted me all these years, how a place can have a personality and impact a story, time, how we're living in the present, but we have memories and dreams at night, and how we sort of reconcile all those things. And probably, at the top of that list is, loneliness and trying to connect to people, and how challenging that can be. And definitely as we get older. And I think my characters, what they all have in common is, wanting to be seen and heard, for all their eccentricities, and wanting to connect. And that's always sort of been something that I've been writing about. Now, all these plays, except there's one upcoming that's fresh and new, but these were all adapted from short plays I'd done over the years. And so the first one I did is The Last Transmission. And that was part of an evening of LA true crime that we used to do in a bar, where we would just be loosely influenced by crime history or, crime in Los Angeles, and write a play. And that's what we did. So this play wasn't about any crime in particular, but it was about police helicopter pilot. And I just it just felt really rich to me, that the strange thing of being up there, and you're over this huge sprawl, and in a way looking at a view at a sprawl, there's all this hope of, there's all these possibilities of what can happen, all these wonderful things for me in the city. But there's also something kind of alienating, because there's people you don't know, and it's so vast. And so I was just able to really connect to him up there and his thoughts. And he was starting to have this guilt about all the crime he had seen below, because he's the one that's saying, oh, the guy went this way, follow him down the alley, and you can, that's where you can find him. And he's up there all alone and, alienated. And so I don't know. And plus I live I live near Hollywood, so there's a lot of police helicopters over here. Um, so so that's how I wrote that one. And the second one was The Grim Sleeper. And that play, each play kind of is a piece of my heart, that means something to me. So The Grim Sleeper, um, Los Angeles has a very full serial killer history. There's a lot of serial killers here. And I grew up in the 70s when there seemed to be kind of one after the other. And The Grim Sleeper was kind of before me. And then, he took a break for a long time and I kind of forgot about him. And I just, I just had all this guilt about forgetting about the killings and the victims. And I wanted to explore that. And so I didn't really want to do anything, I'm not interested in doing, documentary kind of plays, but I did want to look up the names of the victims. And I looked them up and, I said those names out loud. And the youngest one, Princess Cheyenne, is a character in the play. And I think she was only 16. And I just imagined, this ghost of her in an alley downtown. And the play is also about, it's an interaction between her and a homeless guy. And she's a ghost and knows it. And he was killed and is a ghost and doesn't know it. And so she sort of kind of helps him. But both of those things, both of those plights, unsung victims of murders and the homeless that get killed that we don't even think about, I was just very emotionally drawn to that. And again, the settings are a big part of what I do. So it's funny, I can't really write unless I feel a pull with the setting. So the alley, was just very interesting to me. Growing up in cities, I used to go to clubs and, you'd look down alleys and, who's down there? There's always something ominous and mysterious. And so an alley was just kind of perfect for me for that one. Mrs. Huberty is set in San Diego, and that was another murder. It was a mass murder. And James Huberty was the McDonald's mass murder. And so this is about the wife of the murderer. And I just was thinking one day, well, what about these women who are married to these men? Not the women that write to prisoners in jail who want to marry killers, but she actually was married to him and fell in love with him. And, did she know what was happening and, what's happened to her? And so that's where that came from. And then that play takes place with a person who's really interested in true crime. And he's kind of obsessed with finding more, about her. And so that's where that takes place. And then, of course, it goes into a surreal place. So each play sort of goes into that realm. So it starts out kind of naturalistic and then it ends in a strange way. So A Night with Gig Young is another play that was really important to me. It's my Twilight Zone is my favorite show. And if I have to pick a favorite episode, it would be Walking Distance. And it's a beautiful episode about a man, an executive who works in a big city and he's kind of lost and, he finds himself back in his hometown and, missing the simpler things in life. And he meets a younger version of himself. And I've seen it many times. And I was watching it recently and I just thought, well, who is this actor that plays the main guy? I just didn't know who it was. And I looked him up and, oh, shoot, that's Gig Young. He was in To Shoot Horses, Don't They? And I didn't realize it was Gig Young because I don't think I'd seen him really young. And so at the time, I was still involved with LA True Crime, where we were writing plays loosely inspired by crimes. And I looked him up and the first thing I saw was, Gig Young kills his wife and himself. And I was shocked. I had never heard that. And it's just so not what I expected to have happened to him. And yet, it's one of those Hollywood stories where you say, well, not surprised because it's Hollywood and, the pressures of that. And, I was so shocked and, of course, appalled by what he did because he killed, his wife. And, he was such a mixed bag and kind of a a tragic figure. I just really wanted to, kind of explore him. So that was that one. And let's see. So 1:58 a.m. that takes place in a bar in Hollywood, and it's about two middle-aged singles who, lonely. It's the end of the night. The bar is about to close, and the guy is picking up on the girl. And that play, I was able to connect to that emotionally because it's about older people, and I'm not single myself, but LA, well, I mean, maybe this is true all over the world, but I'll just say LA because I live here. It's a strange place to grow older in. And certainly for women, in their 40s and 50s and, trying to meet somebody, it's really hard. And, there's so many young, beautiful people here, and it's a strange place to be middle-aged. So that's kind of what that piece is about. And again, that play goes off, in a strange, very strange way. Nothing good happens after midnight. So this play, I love site-specific work. And this play I had done years ago with my neighbor Thomas. It was an evening called 24 Hours on Sunset, where I wrote different plays that took place in different parts of Sunset Boulevard. And this play was in Echo Park off Sunset. And it was designed to be a walk for a small group of people where you follow the actors and, listen, and they take you on this walk and talk about stuff. And so I adapted that. And the characters, and a lot of the plays have this, talk about things that are no longer here in LA and how strange it is, especially as a native, to grow up and see things you love, just continue to be developed. And, the history of that. And even beyond that, there are things I've seen in movies like Schwab's Pharmacy and stuff that I never saw in person, but I feel like I've been there because of the movies. And he kind of talks about that. And so there's a lot of LA history in there. But the backdrop to that one is the Hillside Stranglers. So they take this walk, and it's during the time where these murders are happening, and they come upon a body, and then it goes off into strange place. A German Christmas. Well, I love the holidays. So I wrote this play, and I'm trying to think of the inspiration. I think, again, this is about an older woman whose husband left her, and she finds herself alone on the holidays, and she meets a young German man who is very attractive, and he's come here, with big dreams, and he finds himself being taken advantage of. He doesn't know what to do, so he sleeps around to make money. It's not, what he ever intended to do. And they sort of have this evening together where they connect. So that's a good example of a play that has unlikely connections between people, which I also really like. No Casanova. So that takes place in Beverly Hills. That was done a couple times with a wonderful actor that we worked on this play a few times. His name's Ryan Catrona. All the actors, I just want to say, in these plays are just fantastic, underappreciated. I so wish, they were working more because they're so incredible. And I'm so lucky to be able to work with them. So it's a long monologue about a rich guy on an estate whose girlfriend has left him, and he can't sleep, and he's just has these weird kind of visions, and he has a houseman who may or may not be there, and it's kind of a nightmarish play. And we did it in a bar, and we got permission to do it at an estate in Pasadena with some piano music improvising during the monologue. So there's music throughout that piece. And in the radio play, there's a soundscape and music throughout also. So that was fun. And, so Ryan and I have a history of working together, and it's always fun to go back to that ice machine. And that one I did on stage with a wonderful actor and dear friend who passed away. You might know who he is, Robert Buddy Staccato. also a very good friend, and he had done this play, and so I knew that I wanted to do it. And Mike Wiles played his part, and he's just a wonderful actor. And that play, the desert, there's so much to sort of, the desert just represents so much. There's drifters there. There's people running away from LA. You run away to the desert because you're on the lam, or you're running to something or from something. And it's a place where people go to, take hallucinogens and expand their mind. And, there's so much to write about. And so that was a pretty easy one to feel connected to. And I wish I had it here. The spark for writing that play was a small drawing that somebody did that I cut out from a newspaper. And it was a guy walking to an ice machine, and it looked like a motel. And there was a light coming from the ice machine that looked like it was kind of otherworldly. And I've always kind of loved it. And so that really was the spark for that play. And that one is about a guy who's kind of lost, and he's not sure what's happening. And he meets a young boy who's actually a younger version of himself at this old abandoned motel. That's another thing you find in the desert a lot is, remnants of Route 66 and all these beautiful crumbling motels. And you can project and imagine the history that took place there. And so they kind of have this scene together. Around and Around was one of the radio plays I did years and years ago that I was able to include here. And that takes place in an abandoned bus station. Years ago, there was an old bus tunnel that was near where Bob Baker Marionettes used to be under the freeway. And it was just open for anybody to wander through, which is actually kind of dangerous. But sorry, I realized the light on me is kind of funky, but so you were just able to wander through there, and it was about a mile or 2 miles long. And I walked in with some friends, and it was pitch black, and it was really scary and interesting. And that tunnel experience always stayed with me. And there's something about bus stations and, places of transience and that I find really intriguing. You step out of your life and you're waiting to get on a bus, or you're traveling, and something can happen. And there's something about buses, taking a bus trip, and being trapped with these people and sitting next to someone, and the intimacy of that, and the conversations you overhear. And there's just so much to be inspired by with buses with that one. And that one we did live also years ago was Dear Marie. And that takes place in Santa Monica Beach. And of course, I'm from here, so I love the beach. I don't go as much as I would like to because of traffic, and the parking's expensive. But I especially love the beach in winter, and I really love the beach after a storm. There used to be an old chart house kind of right on the sand, and you could sit by the window after a storm, and the waves would get really big. And it's not Maine or Vermont, but it's our version of, wild coast. And so I wanted to write a winter beach story. And, it was set in Valentine's Day, and, about people that have these people from their past who are haunting them, who they just can't kind of shake. And I was able, again, to just plug right into the feeling of the beach at winter, where there's hardly anybody there except these two people. And that's where that one came from. Creepy Crawl, it's set in Las Vegas, and it's inspired by the Manson family killings and Susan Atkins. And the idea for that, well, that's sort of directly related to me. I grew up in Las Vegas before we moved to Beverly Hills, and I was young when these killings happened, but old enough to, have them scare the shit out of me when I heard about them. And our house was not far from the La Bianca's house. And I just remember being so scared. And then when I heard the term creepy crawl, that the family was driving around and looking in windows and trying to see who they were going to choose next at random, that just terrified me. So this play is about a girl who's home alone, and Susan Atkins shows up and they have a scene together. The Edge of Heaven, which I'm really excited about. It stars my friend Mark Fite and his daughter Josephine Fite and my friend David Bickford, who's also doing the music. This is set in the old Century City Mall, a place that I spent a lot of time in growing up. I lived a few minutes away, and my father and I used to, and with my sister too, sometimes roller skate down from our house into Century City, and we'd just skate around and around, and we'd see movies there, and there were shops that I went to every year to, go back to school. And there's just something special about that mall. I can't put my finger on it because it's weird to say that, oh, a mall was so dear to my heart, but this one was kind of unique. There was a man who had a flower cart. He was a singing flower man. He's a character in the play. And you just go to the mall and he'd be there singing these songs. And there was just something magical about the mall, even though it was a consumerist place like any mall. But there's just something about it. It was a throwback, to a different time. And again, LA has changed so much since I've been young. Century City is one of the places that I kind of grieve for. And I lost my dad about 5 years ago. And so there is a character in the play, a ghost father character that this young girl encounters. And so that one was kind of very easy to tap into emotionally to write. And Heaven, the reason why it's called The Edge of Heaven is there was a store called Heaven. There was one in Century City in Beverly Hills. And it was just a fun store for adolescent girls to go to. It had all this weird stuff and it was kind of hip. And I think Madonna had a Heaven t-shirt, and it was just kind of a great place. And, it's gone now. So those are the plays that are up now.
And it was mentioned in the press release, but tell me why it was important to have original music and original songs, and why that those themselves are an additional character to the podcast.
Well, I know a lot of musicians, and I knew that I wanted music, and I didn't just want to, offer someone to work on these with just a little bit of potential, do some footsteps and a teeny bit of sound at the beginning, and that's it. I wanted to partly to showcase the wonderful musicians that I know, and have this also be a place that can be a place for them to experiment. So, for example, with 1:58 a.m. and No Casanova, those are two plays that have a constant soundscape. So I guess it was just a place for the musicians to be able to try something, and if it didn't work, that would be okay too. So in a lot of ways, these are kind of experimental, and that was attractive for them. I think it's as much as I love words. And the sound of words spoken, it's also very interesting what's happening when characters aren't speaking, and what we learn from silence, and what's happening inside of that. And I think music tells a story. And for me, the specific music, because I didn't just pick at random the musicians. When I was writing, I was thinking, okay, what kind of music, what kind of vibe do I want? Do I know someone that can do this? So I already sort of had the sense, of what I wanted that would fit into the play. And it's just, this innate sense I have of music furthering the story when the people aren't talking. And with these plays, when you're seeing it live, I'll often have actors, sometimes they're still, but sometimes they'll do something during the music. But in these plays, you can't see the actors. So I think the music really just takes the listener on a journey. And, you don't know where it's going. It's like a ride, but it's part of the play, but it's just sort of breaking out of the words, kind of. And I really love it. In fact, oftentimes the musicians, when I had said, well, this piece of music within the play can be about a minute. And they'll say, really? That seems so long. People are going to get bored. And I say, no. The music's great. They're sort of forced to listen. So even if they might seem like, even if they might get bored or feel like the play's been interrupted, they'll break through that and the music will kind of take over. And each time, I mean, I don't know how successful these are, but with my ear, I feel like it's never been too much music. I feel like it has really been part of the storytelling.
What do you want the audiences to get out of your podcast series?
Oh gosh, that's always a hard one. I don't know. Well, people who aren't from here, maybe they'll get a little window into what it's like to live here. Los Angeles is a mysterious and strange place. Over the years, people have said to me, "Why haven't you moved to New York? You want to be a playwright?" And I love New York, but I just can't seem to leave LA because I'm so inspired by it. And, if you see David Lynch movies that are set here, he just captures that perfectly, that mystery and wonder and underlying sinister quality of Los Angeles. And I'm just really attracted to that. So if you don't live here, it'll be something new. If you do live here, you'll say, oh yeah, I can see that. And I think, I don't know, I mean, it's for people that like stories and the idea that someone's whispering in your ear. I mean, there's such an intimate quality with any radio play, because the actor's right there in your ear. And it's I really enjoy it as a way to listen to stories. And I just hope that, and my characters, they do say some strange things and some dark things and, some perverted things and all kinds of things. And it just seems like, wow, it's going right into the listener's ear. That's great.
Now, you were a one person creative production team concerning this podcast series. So how did that come about, and why?
Well, years ago when I started writing plays, I sent them out, and I got a production once in a while, but not as many as I hoped to get. And I also come from a background, I studied with John Stepling for a long time. He was a local writer, and the group, we wrote and directed our own plays and put them up. And so I kind of come from that. And so, when that wasn't happening to my liking, I just said, well, I could be depressed about this, or I could just start doing it myself. And so I did. I produced a lot of stuff myself, and I created forums for, group shows for other people. Because I just didn't want to sit around and wait for it to happen. And so with this, now I'm not a tech person. So with doing the plays, I found that I could do everything. I could write, I could direct, I did the costumes, I helped with the set, I did the sound, but I'm not a computer person or a tech person, and I'm not really interested in learning, how to edit these or how to do them. So I knew I'd be in trouble. But when Thomas and I first started working together, he was able to do a few of these. And then when he got too busy, I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? And what did I do? I think, well, the first one I did after that was A Night with Gig Young. And so the actors, their son did original music, Jack Littman. He's a wonderful musician. He did the music and sound design, and he was able to record us. So that was lucky. So each one, it's just been lucky. I've found people to record us. I've paid some people along the way, to do the mixing and stuff. Sometimes the musicians, they want to do the music and do the mixing. So that's great. I found somebody in India who wanted to write a song. So I've just been able to find people that want to work on the material that's not breaking the bank for me, because I'm not making money at all. But I do know a lot of people who have been willing to do this for free because they like the work, or it's challenging or something. And again, so with the musicians, I wanted to make sure it was worth their while and they would really get to shine. And I'm sorry about the cuckoo clock. So yeah, each one has kind of been that. So the last one, Dear Marie, a friend of mine who's been listening to the plays and likes them just said in conversation, oh, by the way, my son's a musician. I bet he'd want to do it. And so I called him, and he was able to record us, and we worked together on the music, and that was great. For the next one, I have somebody who's mixing it, and other friends of my friends, kids are doing music, and I still have many people on the list that I know that make music, and they're all different. So I could continue for a while.
Kind of talk about it, but tell me if you want to. My next question was going to ask about, tell me more about the musicians, the photographers, and the artists that you collaborated with. Did you still want to talk about that?
Oh,
Or
sure. I mean, I can mention names, and I can I do that?
yeah,
I'd love to do that. Okay, so yeah, so Thomas Chan did he did The Last Transmission and Mrs. Huberty, The Grim Sleeper, 1:58 a.m. and Nothing Good Happens After Midnight. And again, he's my neighbor. And the most experimental one, well, The Last Transmission is kind of experimental. There's actually a song in there that he wrote that I sing in the middle of it. But he created this very strange soundscape that gradually gets more sinister and weird in 1:58 a.m. And you just, if you're listening with earbuds, you can kind of hear the nuances of it. A Night with Gig Young was Jack Littman, who's the son of Greg and Lisa Littman, who acted in the play, along with Dig Wayne, who played the heckler. Let's see, A German Christmas. I was Elliot Goldkind, who's, among other things, a classical composer. And there were different opportunities, different kind of music. There was lounge music and a little Mexican kind of serenade and some dreamlike music. And he was able to do all of that wonderfully. Dear Marie is Cody Nichols, my friend Andrew John Nichols' son. And we talked about the feeling of the play, the sadness. And he came up with some beautiful atonal kind of piano. And then we matched it with a guitar and synthesizer and worked with a lot of synthesizers as well. Ice Machine was David Harley, who's a wonderful rock musician. And he provided some songs and music. And one of the actors in the play, Jesse Fair, created the sound effects and did the mixing. And a lot of times the sound effects for these plays, they're not just regular, footsteps and door closing. They're, somebody turns into a mirror, or something. So someone has to build and create a brand new sound effect. And, he was able to do a wonderful job with that. Around and Around, my friend Adam Smith, who's done electronic music for a long time. And he now does a lot of what's called electro swing. And he's, amazing. No Casanova was the monologue in Beverly Hills. My friend Randy Greif created the underlying soundscape for that, which is really, really good. And Ramanshu Mishra, somebody I just met in the podcasting world who lives in India, wrote an original song that's beautiful for that. And I think I've hit everything. So upcoming, there's different musicians. And photograph wise, Kevin O'Sullivan is a friend, and he's been taking these amazing pictures of LA, just wandering around. And, they're kind of like what we were talking about, David Lynch does. There's mystery and kind of, darkness. And he's sort of, if you know the photographer Nan Golden, he's kind of the Nan Golden of LA. He knows a lot of people, and he just captures these really great images. So it started out using his photos, and I happen to know other people who are really talented, and I've been looking at their photos. And so I have a big group of photos that each time I'm ready to post a play, I just sort of go through and go by intuition. So I'm not looking for a photo that, goes perfectly with the play. It just something just kind of speaks to me. But those are all friends. And, my husband did one of the photos. I snuck one of my photos in. And the art on the website, so the photos are all on the website. The art is by Cassie Taggart, and she's a wonderful painter who I've known for a long time. Another wonderful, talented artist who should be way more famous and, than she is. And I asked her if I could use her paintings, and I described, the vibe of the podcast, and she said yes. So I was able to use 4 of her paintings for the different tabs on the website. And the homepage one is our logo. and it just kind of fits perfectly. They have a, there's a darkness to them, but a playfulness, and like a little sinister kind of fairy tale. They're not LA-esque, but the photos are that. These are more kind of the fairy tale world, which is something else that I love. And I think these plays, in a way, I mean, I'm reluctant to call them fairy tales because, I don't know if they are. I hope they are, but maybe they are. They're LA fairy tales for adults. And her art is very much like that.
So tell us what you look for when you listen to your podcast plays.
Well, the first thing that happens is I listen to them in horror and say, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Just the insecure, the fearful part of me, because now they're out there and they're not ephemeral. So I get a little bit, like, what have I done? And but then I say, well, wait a minute, these are interesting, and I feel like each one does. See, how do I say this? I wanted each play to sort of the story to bubble up from the location. And I didn't just tack these locations on. Oh, I'm going to set this here and set this here. They all very much come from the location. The Grim Sleeper, if I set them somewhere else in an office or something, I think the writing would be different. And so I am very happy is that they seem to paint, these places, and I can envision them when they're talking. And I'm very excited by that. And I'm also just amazed at the quality of the actors and how much they're bringing these characters to life. And the music, each play is different. So it's not the same musicians, the same actors. So each one, even though it's my writing and, my neuroses and, all that mixed in, each play is kind of its own thing, because the musicians are different and the setting is different. And so that means the story is going to be different if it's in Beverly Hills or it's in an abandoned bus station. And so I'm just really happy that it's kind of bringing these places to life like a haunting, because I do love abandoned buildings, and I do love ruins, and that feeling of when you're wandering around one, it does feel haunted, and you can get a glimmer of history and, things that have happened there. And the places kind of talk to you. And I've always loved that. And so I do think that I've managed to do that.
This is an important question. Tell us, why should people be listening to a Garden and Terrible Blooms short play podcast series? So tell the listeners or the people watching this, why should people be listening to your podcast series?
Well, I think people should be listening. I mean, there's so much competition, so they can listen to everything in addition to mine. But again, I'm a Los Angeles native, and I'm proud of my city and its murder history, and Hollywood and all the strangeness here. As annoying as it can be, it's also wondrous. And I'm a proud native. I don't know. That's one reason. I think that they're unique. It doesn't mean that it's a good podcast, but it's certainly unique in that these pieces are surreal. I think a lot of radio play podcasts, they're straight plays, they're naturalistic, which, don't get me wrong, I love naturalism also. But I think these, I haven't listened to many, but what I'm doing is a little different, because these are surreal. They're either a mix of naturalism and surreal, or they're even more surreal. And I think that's unique. And I think the degree of music is unique, and just sharing my love for, like we've been talking about, music as a facet of storytelling and not just transitional. Certainly films do it all the time. In fact, if you watch a TV show, procedural or 1 hour drama, it almost always ends with the last 2 minutes. They'll do a song and they'll show you the characters doing stuff, without speaking. So it's not a new idea that, I've created. But I always seem to have more music and these aren't musicals, but then other plays that are produced. And I think that's different. Whether or not it's worth listening to or people are interested in that, I can't say. But those are, and I guess also the plays sort of veer into the dark side of Los Angeles without being bleak. I didn't want the plays to be just, a slow boat to hell. But it is it's kind of the B side or the dark side. People come here from all over the world and they want to see celebrities and, do cool things and stuff. But, there's dark things that are interesting too. And I don't know. And that's always my interest when I visit somewhere. I want to go to the cemeteries. I want to learn about, some interesting things about the city. So it's like I was saying, it's sort of an alternate dreamlike audio tour of Los Angeles. I try to drop a play every month and a half. I don't want these to be binged. I kind of like the idea of the play being dropped and it, sitting there for a while so someone could listen to it again. That's one of the comments that I've gotten a lot from people is that they sort of defy categorization and they should be listened to again. And, you pick up nuances. And so I like that each one just kind of sits there for a good month or month and a half. And plus, I kind of need that time to do the work because it's a lot of work, but it's fun. It's been, really, really challenging and really fun. When Thomas first told me he was going to be too busy, I just went, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I thought, well, I'll find a way. And so far I found a way to do these, and I'm really happy. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I am the playwright, director, and creator of A Garden of Terrible Blooms podcast. We have a website where you can listen to the plays for free. It's www.terribleblooms.net. We also have some wonderful photographs and paintings, original art on the site. And of course, if you follow podcasts, you can download us from any podcast forums. If you're interested or intrigued or even hate Los Angeles, you might enjoy this podcast. If you're attracted to the dark side or, ghost stories or fairy tales set in urban environments, you might enjoy this podcast. The plays are short. They're 15, sometimes 20 minutes with a lot of original music from local musicians and, of course, local talent, local actors. And it was made with love, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you for listening or watching this podcast episode of Stage Explorations. To learn more about the theater creative and more theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations, go to www.stageexplorations.com. Once again, that is www.stageexplorations.com. There is no space between stage and explorations. You may find more videos, podcasts, and information about this theater creative and other theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations YouTube channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the theater.